Hello and good morning, everybody. We are very, very happy to have you all aboard. Even though we don't see you, we know that you are there. At the moment, our timer is counting 70, our clock is counting 70 participants, and it's getting more and more each minute. The first sessions were very successful, were very fantastic, absolutely interesting, fascinating stuff people talked about. And we are sure that we can make the next one, the South Central Asian one, equally fascinating. So this is a very unique event that has been drawn up by the Wellfish Migration Foundation team, and I'm very happy to participate in it. My name is Ruben. I'll moderate the next session, and I have a few announcements for the participants. That is, one, you can only see and listen. There's no chance for you to share your webcam or your microphone. That means if you have a question, you please use the question function that you see at the bottom of your user interface. And we have a question monitor. That person is Roxanne, and she will constantly monitor the question box and try to pick, of all the questions, try to pick the most interesting, most significant ones, and also the ones that are most popular. And you can increase the popularity of a question by just liking it. Then we see it flagging up, and then we know that more people are interested in this sort of question. We try to answer these questions at the end of each talk and also at the end of the whole session. If you have any other issue, you can use the chat function. This is right next to the question function. We have a chat manager, that's a different person. Our chat manager today is Mark, or it's the other way around, Roxanne and Mark, I'm very sorry. And they will try to help you with any issue that you may encounter. And if something goes wrong with the software, we have a backup system up and running, and you will have given a link to join that, I assume. If not, we will probably do that at some point. So don't worry, if anything goes wrong, we will have you back up online very soon, and we can continue with the session. And with this, I would like to hand over the stage to Arjan, and he's going to introduce this very session. Thank you very much, Arjan.
Okay, thank you, Ruben. My name is Arjan Berghuizen. I'm from the World Fish Migration Foundation. It was not so long ago, I think a month or something like that ago, that Herman came up to me and he said, I have a great idea. Let's do a 24-hour webinar, moving around with the sun and having sessions at each time zone. And right away, I thought, this is nice, let's do that. And with the whole team, we started working on it. And then we realized, oh, that is a bit complex to organize something like that. And then last week we thought, oh my God, are we going to manage this all? And now we think, yes, this is a very good idea. It's a bit of an experiment, so bear with us, but we will try to make the most out of it. First, I would like to have a little bit of an idea of you, of people listening. So we made a small poll, and I will show that. There are 3 questions, and you can answer them by clicking on the answers. And then after that, you can submit it. And then we have a little bit of an idea who is watching us. So I see some questions coming in already. First question is about, are you mainly a fish lover, or do you enjoy nature more, or are you really enthusiastic about rivers specifically? The second question is more about your background. We want to have an idea. Are you a policymaker or a student and things like that? And the last, we are just curious if you intend to look at more sessions than one, because this is the first time that we do this, of course. So, we already got quite some answers. Let me just share that with you. We see that most of you like fish, rivers, and nature. So that is very clear. Some of us are really enthusiastic about rivers, but most are more general, so to say. Most of the people are, the larger group, so to say, are scientists and students. Also policymakers though, non-profit organization, business also, very interesting. So it's a good mix of people, so that's nice. And I'm glad to see that a lot of people plan to watch more of the sessions. So that fits with the idea of this global webinar. Let me then continue with the presentation, because yeah, having looked at who you are, this is very shortly who we are. World Fish Migration Foundation started 5 years ago. We are here, a picture of the team 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, at a huge old dam in France that is now taken away as a dam removal. Very inspiring project. And you see at the right side for also a lot of other people involved in our work, volunteers, other colleagues. It's been growing pretty fast. It started actually in 2014 with the first World Fish Migration Day that Herman Wanninger initiated. And after, yeah, really quick, I'm impressed. The first time there are already more than 270 events in 50+ countries. After that, we initiated the Happy Fish, a symbol of projects that help migratory fish. 2 years later, the second World Fish Migration Day was organized. The project Dam Removal Europe was started. I will tell a little bit more about it later. We were heavily involved in the Amber project. It's really interesting project focusing on barriers in European rivers. And in 2018, we organized the third World Fish Migration Day with even more than 60 countries and more than 570 events. We also launched the second From Sea to Source guide about fish migration. You can still download that. And now we're starting this Global Swimways concept, this idea. And the idea is then that in the future, we will have a possibility to celebrate at least one river opening per day. And throughout all these years, we have been gathering contacts all over the world. And now we have around 10,000 contacts of people, really globally, who are interested in this subject and are willing to do something to improve the situation for migratory fish. And that is really necessary because we are currently working on a new version of a Living Planet Index for migratory fish. In 2016, one was published by the Zoological Institute of Society of London, and they have made the Living Planet Index together with WWF to see how it's going with species, with abundancy. And for migratory fish, it's going down. And the study that we're doing now is showing a much more serious decline than you even see here. And I can tell you, we will publish it in October probably, but it will be a grim picture. So we really need to do something. And that's why we thought maybe we need to learn from others. For example, people protecting migratory birds. They use the concept of flyways, and I think that's really fascinating. The flyway concept was developed in the 1930s in the United States. Scientists were mapping the migration routes of birds from north to south, and they started cooperating together, gathering data together, and gathering, creating policies that were additional to each other. And that work was sort of a kickoff that in 1971 led to the Ramsar Convention, a worldwide convention, which agreed to have wetlands protected for these migratory birds. And such joint efforts continued and continued. Now there are summits for the flyways where countries will cooperate, UN is involved, etc. So I think that's really inspiring for us. What we can learn from them is they have a very serious scientific basis also about mapping these migration routes and they've called it that the flyways. This is a picture from polar view, from the North Pole, and it's showing the main migration routes of birds. And we would like to do a similar effort for fish. This is a picture that was made a few years ago. It's a drawing, really, really nice and inspiring. Now the next step is, of course, to make it more like a scientific thing. So we have a current project running with IUCN and UNEP and University of Cambridge. And meanwhile, a lot of other partners are supporting this too, to make a first map of global swimways. This is a quick concept draft of it. It's far from finished. First of all, we've been talking a lot about the perfect definition of swimways. Currently, we talk about those routes where the most of the migratory fish are actually making use of that pathway, and also the threatened species. And we finding the data to make this as complete as possible, and that's a big effort. We need a lot of more data for that, and therefore we need a cooperation between a lot of people working on this issue worldwide. And from experience, I think we dare to say that this cooperation works. For example, the European eel. European eel, as you might know, is a fish born in the Sargasso Sea, let's say close to the Gulf of Mexico, and then it goes slowly towards Europe. And Europe, it spreads and it goes into rivers and really goes into the countries of Europe. And then when it's big enough, it goes back to the sea and goes back to the Sargasso Sea to repeat the life cycle. During that travel, it encounters all kinds of problems. For example, in Spain, there's the risk to be taken out and be eaten by us humans. In the Netherlands, for example, if you manage to go through as eel and swim to Germany, or in the meadows of the Netherlands, and you're grown up and you want to go back, you risk to be slaughtered by pumping stations and well, all these different threats. If you want to protect the species like that, you need to do it all, actually. Now, and this is nice. For example, for the European eel, now is really the starting new legislation to protect it, where all the countries, all these activities are combined together, where non-profit organizations support that, etc. So it's a joint effort. And that is something we like to work on more, on these joint efforts. This is the one where I myself and Herman and other from our organization were involved in. It's an example of the Netherlands, where we were looking at the Afsluitdijk. It's a 32-kilometer dam. It was an ecological disaster in the Netherlands. It's dividing sea and freshwater, and fish, migratory fish, have really big problems to pass this. So we decided we wanted to have a hole in that dike, in that dam, and that's not very popular in the Netherlands, to make gaps in the dam. But we thought we want to do it, and there were all arguments against it, like, yeah, we don't want salt water to get into the fresh water, it's dangerous, etc. But we found solutions, and with all the joint effort, we managed to get to a design and the funding to do this. Now this is being built. It's a 50 million euro project, and it's being built for the migratory fish. It's called the Fish Migration River. Very nice project to do it together. And that spirit also led to another project for example, Dam Removal Europe, where different organizations, inspired also by what's going on with dam removals in United States, but also now that we've heard this morning, also in Korea and Japan, is just to make use of each other's best practices and to inspire each other how to take this forward to improve the situation for migratory fish. And we honestly believe that there's so much to learn from each other and to inspire each other and to stand up together to make the story of migratory fish better known in the world. That is why we organized this webinar, and I'm really eager to listen to this session. The last two sessions were very nice. So Ruben, back to you to continue with the session of today. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjan. Thank you for this inspiring talk. It always gives me the goosebumps when you say that all it takes is for us to, you know, work together and make it happen, because I absolutely believe that's what it takes. Let me introduce the speaker today. Officially, she's called Julie Clausen, and she's a fisheries biologist and director of operations at the Fisheries Conservation Foundation, and the current president of the Science Communication section of the American Fisheries Society. That's the official summary. But there's a bit more, because I was very lucky to actually meet her in person on a conference in Thailand earlier this year. And all I can say about her, that she's a crazy, inspiring, passionate, and very entertaining and energetic and wonderful woman that I locked in my heart, as we Germans say. And I'm very, very happy that she could make it today. And thank you so much for joining us. And I'm looking forward to what you have to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ruben. Can you hear me okay? See okay? All right.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Just really thrilled to be a part of this session and the whole Global Swimway Marathon. It's just a brilliant idea. Herman and Arjan and Ruben are just such an inspiration, and I'm one of their biggest fans, and just happy to talk about Mahseer today. So I will be talking about golden Mahseer, but first I want to point out a couple of my compadres. I am Julie Clausen with the Fisheries Conservation Foundation. I work with my partner, David Phillip, who's part of this research. And then in Bhutan, the Ministry of Agriculture and Forests, many partners there, and World Wildlife Fund in Bhutan as well. So the star of the show is the golden Mahseer. They're a large-scaled fish, very muscular, very powerful swimmers. You can just look at them and see that how they could power up these fast rivers and rapids that are really built for migration. In Bhutan, they have a cultural and religious significance. They're one of 8 Buddhist auspicious symbols. So they have a very special significance. It gives them an interesting in for conservation. And they also, like the taimen that we heard earlier in the other Asian session, they are a prized fish for recreational fishing. And so fly fishermen will travel all over the world for a chance to fish for Mahseer. And again, we'll talk a little bit later about that as a conservation aspect. So here's typical habitat of Mahseer, very steep-sided mountains, very steep-sided valleys, fast water, rapids. And one of the reasons that Mahseer have been studied so little is it's just really difficult habitat. It's really, really challenging logistics to get. As you can see, the roads are often not down with the river, and to get down to the river is just can be rather treacherous. So not much work has been done on the wild populations. Their range is throughout the Himalayas. They span from Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, Nepal, Bhutan, all the way to northern Myanmar, to the northern part of the Himalayas there. And they haven't been studied very much. And so one of the really important aspects of when you travel in this region is really touching base with the locals there. It's really our only historical picture that you can get an idea of where these fish exist. This individual, wonderful man I met in February in Nepal, was telling me when he was a child, his father was a fisherman, and his father would bring home these huge Mahseer, and bigger than he was, and had such a big impression on him. And of course, they no longer exist in this river. So it's really the only way that we can get a picture of where these fish have been in some of these places. So in 2014, Bhutan was in the throes of planning for hydropower and building hydropower, and they had very little data to put into their cumulative impact assessments or their environmental impact statements, and realized that they just really had this big hole that they knew nothing about their Mahseer populations. So we came to work with the ministry and we're a wildlife fund to develop a program there to really focus on very basic questions. What are the migration patterns? Where do they go? Where do they spawn? Where do they overwinter? All these things that really were big question marks. And we focused on a radio-telemetry study to do that, to track the fish. So we implant radio-telemetry tags into the fish, and then we have receiver stations along the river that then will tell us when the fish swim by. And it's really an excellent way to just find out migration patterns of these fish. And so here's a Google Earth of the watershed that we worked in. This was the largest watershed in Bhutan, the Manas Basin. And the dotted line there is the border with India. So they go about 800 meters up into the mountains, and then go as low as 100 meters down by the border. And so here is that sketch of the river system. And so I'm just going to walk you through what we've learned about their migration patterns and what happens throughout the year. So in the winter, all the fish are in the southern part of the region. And then as it begins to warm up in March, April, May, fish begin to move up into the watershed. And they continue to move up. They stage it at the mouths of tributaries. And then in July, August, September, it's the monsoon season. The rains begin to come, and they go up into the tributaries to spawn. And then they really stay up into the watershed throughout the monsoon season. And then in the fall, in October, November, they begin to come down and then overwinter in December, January, and February. So one reason that I have the two colors of fish here to point out is that we found that there were two very distinct populations. So they show homing, they show a lot of homing behavior. So the green fish always went up the Dangmachu, the right-handed river, and the yellow fish always went up the left-handed river, and we never saw any fish mix. And we also saw them return to the same tributaries. There's more work to be done there. But this homing behavior is a very, very interesting part of their life history that really wasn't known before. So just basically what we learned, that the fish move upstream before water levels rise in the summer. And this is important, especially when you're talking about hydropower and looking at environmental flows. So this wasn't, this is not what people thought, that they were moving up in low water and really going up these rapids in low water. And then they stay up in the watershed. So again, this can have a lot of implications when you're talking about changing the flow of the rivers. And then this homing behavior. So what happens if you put a dam in? What do the fish do? Do they just adjust and go to another tributary, or do they just continue year after year, try to go back to their stream that they want to spawn in? All these things are unknown. And so what we've basically learned for protecting their critical habitats throughout their life history, well, the tributaries and mouths of tributaries are just so critical for protection. So when they go up in the spring, when they travel, migrate up the rivers in the spring, they stage at the mouths of these tributaries. And this picture on the right, there's this black part at the mouth of the tributary. Those are all fish. It's just a mass of fish just waiting there for the rains to come so they can go up and spawn. And then the tributaries, of course, are very important nursery areas. But these are also really accessible areas that can be open to fishing, and whether it's legal fishing or uncontrolled fishing. So big conservation concern there. The overwintering areas can have very, very high concentrations of fish. Certainly in the watershed that we worked in, massive amount of fish in a very, very small area. So again, huge conservation implications there. And we're starting to do some work in Pakistan, and it seems that that may be the same behavior there, where the high concentrations with overwintering fish. And then, of course, open river corridors. This is true for any migratory species that, you know, you reach the spawning areas, you have to have a free-flowing river to get there. The threats, we've heard about some of the threats in earlier talks. The biggest threat that keeps me, gives me nightmares is sand mining. When you start to travel around this part of Asia and you see the effects of sand mining and uncontrolled, unregulated sand mining, it is really, really frightening. Very little data on how it is affecting fish behavior or habitats. But when you drive through and just see miles and miles and miles of sand mining, it's really, it really hits you in the gut. This picture is from Bhutan. This was a little tributary that we had spawning in. We'd had juveniles in. We came back 6 months later. There was this rock crushing station there, and we snorkeled in it and saw no juveniles. It was covered in silt, and just really depressing, but also really, really interesting on how quickly a stream can degrade when this kind of activity starts. Some of the other shorter term threats: urban expansion, roads and bridges. Roads are often built right next to the river, or at least can impact the rivers. And these are shorter term, but very little data or information on how that affects fish and migratory Mahseer. And then illegal and uncontrolled fishing. Wherever you travel throughout this region, you can find gill nets at the mouths of tributaries or as you walk around. And so, you know, again, a big threat. And then dams, they are the more longer term, larger threat. And whether it's a small dam or a large dam, if it blocks the migration pattern, there'll be effects for the population. In this part of the world, run-of-the-river dams or water diversion dams seem to be the most popular. And so you have a large stretch of dewatered zone. And when you're talking about individual or species that need to migrate up and then need to migrate back down, this just presents huge challenges. And so when you talk about mitigation, I'm going to be a little harsh here for the mitigation. Certainly e-flows and the balancing of water needs is wonderful, and there's some really, really great e-flow studies and designs out there. But when it comes down to when there's low water, will migratory Mahseer actually get the priority? So because they migrate in the lowest water, there's a lot of competition for that water. And so there's a lot of questions whether that will actually play out. Fish passage, again, it's always thrown out as this great panacea, but in this part of the world, there has yet to be a fish ladder or fish passage that has been shown to work for Mahseer or designed specifically for Mahseer or some of the other migratory species like snow trout. And it's just very difficult to maintain a healthy population. And then hatcheries, this could be a whole other talk, but I'll just comment that if you want to maintain a wild native population and maintain biodiversity, you can't do it with a hatchery as your only mitigation strategy. And it's also a very expensive strategy. So I think these are just Band-Aids and they will not save a population. So then the question is, how can we save Mahseer? And Zeb Hogan said this earlier in the session, it's really all about habitat. And if we want to keep Mahseer on this planet, and if we want to keep large migratory fish on this planet, we just have to make it a priority. There are some really great examples. In Pakistan, they have the Poonch River Mahseer National Park. I just love this concept. It's not only a national park, it's a park specifically to save these fish. And it's going through some growing pains, but it is, it really has its heart in the right place and has some great plans. this is a national, the middle one is a national park in Afghanistan. It is broader range, but it is on a river and protecting that river. And then in North America, there's the native fish conservation areas. There's a very successful one on the Tennessee River and in Texas. And our foundation is working to bring this concept to Bhutan or Thailand or some of the partners that we've been working with in Asia. So this is bringing stakeholders, all the stakeholders in the watershed together to come to agreements to protect habitat, and really relies heavily on recreational fishing as a both an economic source and a conservation strategy for protecting habitat and saving these fish. So, you know, I think it really comes down to a societal question of, do we want to have a world where without Mahseer, without these big migratory fish? And I think the more that you learn and know about these habitats, that the answer will be yes. And then people will have the wherewithal to set aside some habitat and save these fish. And with that, I will answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. That was truly interesting, terrifying, and also a bit encouraging. I'm always stricken by the really crazy beauty and grace of these fish. I really like them, and it was very interesting to see the sequence of them when I traveled Asia earlier this year. So do we have any questions? Is the question manager up and running? Is there something?
Hi, Ruben. Thank you very much. Yes, Julie, thank you very much for your talk. It was really interesting to listen to. We got a few questions. I can only ask one for now. You were saying something about the separate populations you encountered that swim up different rivers. There was a question wondering whether you did collect samples for genetic analysis to confirm these distinct populations.
Yes, so as part of this, a part of our work, we work with two geneticists from the University of Arkansas, Mike and Marlis Douglas. And so every fish that we catch, we collect a fin sample, and then they do the DNA analysis. So their preliminary work is showing that not only do you see distinct populations in the rivers, but there is some evidence that there may be returning to natal, returning to natal tributaries. And so this has to be, you know, it's very preliminary yet, but certainly enough spark there that that we're looking more into that. So it might just not be that they home back, but they're actually returning to their natal spawning. And then there is an effort through the International Mahseer Conference. We had one in Bhutan in 2018, and we had one in Thailand just this last February. And so a lot of geneticists got together and are coordinating some of the work that they can look at larger population differences among the region.
Thank you very much. Maybe if you have time, there are some other questions. You might answer them if you have time for this, but I think that's it for now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thank you again, Julie. We happily talk a little bit about Mahseer again later when there's time. Our next speaker is Olga. I'm very glad she could make it. Olga is the coordinator of protected areas of the WWF Russia Amur branch. And we are very happy to have her here. Olga, if you would be so kind and activate your webcam. Yes, there you are. And also start sharing the screen. That must be that big green button at the top, at the bottom of your screen. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you all right. We can hear you just fine. And we can also see your presentation. The floor is yours. We are looking forward to your talk. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Dear friends and colleagues, everyone who joined us today, good afternoon. My name is Olga Chebulkova. I am coordinator of protected areas project of WWF Russia, Amur branch. Greetings from Vladivostok. Today I will tell you about our amazing Amur River in the Russian Far East. This is our greatest treasure. Let's go. The Amur River is one of 10 largest rivers on the world. She's length is 4,444 kilometers from the sources of the Argun River to the Amur estuary. The Amur River basin forms the basis of the Amur Ecoregion. It is recognized by WWF as one of 200 most important ecoregions in the world. His area is more than 2 million square kilometers, covering the territories Russia, China, and Mongolia. The westernmost part of ecoregion is the Daurian steppes. This is habitat of such rare species as Mongolian gazelle, the white-necked crane, and the demoiselle crane, the toboggan marmot, and predatory birds. The middle and lower reaches of Amur River are huge floodplain territories inhabited by about 400 bird species. It's home to 80% of the world's population of oriental stock and 65% of the red-crowned cranes. They are listed in the international and Russian red books. It's home to the largest non-fragment grouping of the Amur tiger. Predators' problems attract the attention of the public, the scientific heads of Russia, China, and India. The Amur leopard, the world's rarest predator, lives on the territory of the Primorsky province in the southeastern part of Russia on the border with China. 130 species of fish, including six species of salmon and 2 species of sturgeon, Amur sturgeon and Kaluga sturgeon, live here. The Amur basin is the only habitat of the world's largest freshwater fish, Kaluga, whose weight can exceed ton. Uniqueness: Amur basin is located in very different natural and climatic zones. This explains a huge biological diversity of the land and the water ecosystems of the Amur Ecoregion. For 25 years, WWF Russia projects and programs here aimed not only at preserving rare species, but also their habitat. Therefore, WWF staff is fighting for the preservation of forests in the Big Cats range, for the preservation of free-flowing rivers. The main course of Amur River today is free of dams. However, 3 tributaries of Amur, Zea, Burea, and Tsinghua rivers are already blocked by dams. The enormous reservoirs have flooded entire forests. Huge damage has been done to fish population. The river's hydro regime has changed. 4 times WWF, with the help of partners and the public, managing to prevent the construction of dams of the main Amur River. Thanks to WWF efforts, a protected area was created on the site of the planned hydroelectric facility. The creation of protected areas is an essential element of nature conservation. WWF relies on the concept of network of protected areas in its work. This is a network connected to each other and ensuring the conservation of flag species and their habitat. Mongolian gazelle, tiger, and leopard also have their own protected areas. The floodplain of the Amur River and its tributaries is most important migration and breeding cities for migratory birds. So the international program Amur Green Belt was adopted for this area, which allow to form almost completed network of protected areas. The Amur is one of the richest salmon rivers in Eurasia. Freshwater salmon live here. Taimen, Linok, grayling. Pacific salmon come here from the Pacific Ocean to spawn. There are chum salmon, pink salmon, and Mahseer salmon. Salmon are important part of the ecosystem. Also, salmon is traditional food resource for indigenous people. Pacific salmon are extracted on industrial scale in the lower reaches of the Amur and Amur estuary in Khabarovsk province of Russia. However, there is a serious problem of reducing population of this fish in certain years, which is caused by overexploitation as a result of illegal and legal fishing. In 2017, local residents raised the alarm. The fish did not reach them. Why did this happen? State regulation is determining the allowable catch of salmon, does not take into account the number of spawned fish. Stocks are determined by the catch of previous year. If the allocated catch quota was exhausted, then the forecast was correct. State regulation believes that no less fish than this year will return in next 4 or 2 years. Fishermen who legally take a quota unwittingly decline fish stocks. At the same time, it is impossible to take into account the poaching factor. This system had led to overfishing and weakening of the population of salmon in last year. Since 2018 years, public monitoring of spawning grounds is being conducted in the Amur basin with the support of WWF Russia. Pre-trained representatives of indigenous people take part in this work. People go to hard-to-reach places and count fish in tributaries using special methods. In addition to monitoring, volunteers conduct public control to reduce poaching during salmon run and spawning season. Present volunteers on the water increase the effectiveness of protection of chum salmon and pink salmon. In 2018, average filling of spawning grounds on the largest spawn tributaries of the Amur River was estimated at less than 1 fish per 100 square meters. In 2019, there were a little bit more fish, about 2 fish per meters per this square. This is extremely small. The optimal filling capacity is 50 fish per 100 square meters. The results were presented to government authorities of Khabarovsk province and were discussed at the commission that determines quotas for salmon catch. Many of recommendations proposed by WWF were taken into account when elaborating the Pacific salmon fishing strategy in 2019. Thanks to the efforts of the public and the government of Khabarovsk province, measures were taken to reduce the fishing load on the Amur River. But still few fish were registered on the run. The spawning grounds were not filled. It is necessary to increase protection measures and reduce the fishing load. It will not be possible to save and restore salmon without introducing mandatory monitoring of spawning grounds in the current conditions. Public monitoring is planned to be continued at least until 2023. We need to get date on the result of the return of generation of 2017 and 28. We need to assess the effectiveness of the taken measures. Sturgeon also requires serious attention. Amur sturgeon and Kaluga. These species are listed in the Red Book in Russia, and their catch is prohibited. However, they are very attractive objects of poachers. The solution to this problem requires a lot of resources, so we have focused on the protection salmon. We plan to continue this work at least until 2023. It is necessary to understand how the measures taken now will affect salmon population in the future. We are constantly looking for funding for this work because the monitoring of model rivers requires moving on long distance and working in the field. The Amur River basin is the ecological framework of Amur Ecoregion. Its ecosystem is unique not only as river, but also should be considered from a comprehensive perspective with river valleys. The Amur River is home a large number of fish, including those migration from the ocean. Due to its geographical location, the Amur River needs to be protected in a transboundary aspect. Thank you for your attention. Together, we can do more. If you have any question, you can send them to me by email. My email you can see on my slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olga, for this great talk. It was very, very interesting. I think it's most striking how the whole area around the Amur is just full of diversity, be it cultural or biological. And yeah, so we deviate a little bit from our normal MO in the sense that we ask you to just keep your questions coming, and Olga will just answer them directly and not have them read out loud by our question manager. We have time for questions, so we can do that right now.
Hi, Ruben.
Yes.
Thanks for this great talk. Really interesting to follow this again. Thank you very much. There was one person saying if there could be told anything about the beluga sturgeon in its conservation, if possible.
So let's see. Olga, did you hear that? Did you get the message, the question in writing? Olga, your microphone is still muted.
Oh.
I'll just unmute you. Now there we go.
We have two species of sturgeon, Amur sturgeon and Kaluga sturgeon. But 1 minute. The species are listed in the Red Book in Russia, and their catch is prohibited. They in Red Book of Russia. However, we have problem with poaching, but the solution to this problem requires a lot of resources. So we have focused in the protection salmon.
All right, thank you.
We make a project with salmon now, but we won't make project about sturgeon in last time, in future.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe we have time for answering another question if you feel like it. So I believe the questions have been forwarded to you. If you just want to pick one and answer them, we'd be happy to hear them. If not, we just move to the next speaker.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can move on, Ruben. I think the questions are being asked directly. I cannot see them right now on my screen. So if possible, then Olga can answer them directly by chat. But thanks a lot, Olga, for answering this question and for your presentation.
All right. Thank you very much, Olga. It's been a pleasure having you here. Please stay around until the end of the session. And let's move to the next speaker. So the next speaker would normally be Julie, but Julie gave her talk already. Thank you again for being so flexible about that. if there is Herman already online, I would really appreciate it if Herman would now activate his webcam and his audio and give a spontaneous surprise presentation, because we're missing one speaker that unfortunately couldn't make it today. So Herman, if you can hear me, please activate your audio and your webcam, and we are looking forward to what you have to say. In the meantime, I will just tell you guys, we have 110 participants for this session at the moment. That's fantastic. And Herman is actually the founder of the World Fish Migration Foundation. He comes up with all these crazy ideas, for example, the idea of that webinar here. And I have met Herman on a conference in Austria last year. And my boss actually pointed him out to me, and I knew about the World Fish Migration Foundation, so I just approached him, and he's a very approachable, very energetic guy. He's like constantly jumping around, full of ideas. And I asked him whether I could just work with him together, and he was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. And since then, we have been working together, and I'm very, very happy about that. He's truly inspiring. He has so many cool ideas. And yeah, if he is online anytime soon, I would really like for him to...
Hi, Ruben.
Hey.
So I think Herman is not here, but if
he's not. Okay.
If Derek is okay to go ahead and do his presentation.
Sure, let's ask. Derek, are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, then we jump to Derek and maybe let Herman talk later if there's still time. That's not a problem at all. Derek, thank you so much for being flexible and moving up your talk a little bit too. Let me introduce you quickly. You are the Indian representative of the International Game Fishing Association and the Vice President of the All India Game Fishing Association. And it's funny, I knew who Derek was before I saw him, and it was actually very, very cool to see. He's that, you know, slightly wild-looking guy that has a tan and a shirt and long hair. But in that instance where I met him, he was boxed in a suit jacket and was very fun to look at. Really, really nice. And he does an extraordinary job at public outreach and community integration of nature conservation concerns, especially, of course, related to Mahseer. And he's super fun. I wish I could hang out more with him, or even better, join one of his trips. And I'm very, very happy that you're here today, Derek. It's great to see you again. And please, the floor is yours. You may start sharing your screen, and I'm looking forward to your talk.
Same here, Ruben. It was nice meeting you. Yeah, the wild man look works well, I think. I'm gonna share my screen. I think my presentation is visible.
Yes, we can see and hear you just fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. My name is Derek. I am part of Mahseer Trust, which is one of the NGOs for fish. And it's a UK-based, but working across the Mahseer Range country. I also represent All India Game Fishing Association, where I'm the vice president, and we promote angling as a tool for conservation. And of course, the International Game Fishing Association, which is the IGFA. I'm the Indian representative for them here. I will start with my presentation, which is about the migratory fish of India. Just to give some facts about India, India is the 7th largest country in the world. India has 12 major rivers. The rivers are large, spanning from 800 to over 2,525 kilometers in length. That should be of a know. I mean, this fact is, I think, known to everybody. Or if it is not known, India is the 3rd largest dam building nation after China and US. Okay. And this figures will actually be mind-boggling, is India has over 5,701 number of large dams. Basically, a large dam is, it constitutes of about 15 meters from its base. So that's how a large dam is considered. There are still about 437 dams under construction. The new dams that have been come up, and actually, I think a few years ago, 3 years ago, there were another 500 which have been approved to be constructed. We have 293 dams that are over 100 years old at the moment. In terms of India's freshwater species, we have a great biodiversity. I think, as everyone knows, we have over 1,300 freshwater fish species, and primarily where I am from, that is the Karnataka. We have something called the Western Ghats that is running through Kerala. Western Ghats and the northeastern part have the maximum number of freshwater species in India, and they're connected by a river. If you see the map on the right, you will see that the rivers are connecting throughout India. We have some rivers that go into the ocean, and some rivers actually just dissipate into the sand. We have about estimated over 50 migratory species, which is not confirmed because a thorough study has not been done in terms of the migratory species of India. But we know there are 6 known species of the migratory fish, which I will take you through. One, of course, is the iconic species, which is the Mahseer. We have 8 species of Mahseer. Barramundi, we have it in India, Southeast Asia, also is very popular, and also Australia. So we have the barramundi, which is spread, and everybody knows that the barramundi is a migratory fish and needs to go into fresh water to spawn. We have the Indo-Pacific tarpon, or also we call the ox-eye tarpon, which is also a migratory species. There's not enough data for us to actually classify it by IUCN. The Indian shad, or the leash, is one of the very popular table fish actually in the Bengal side. So it's very popular. It's also a migratory species. The least concern is basically of the last study that was done. Apparently, classification will change because it's being heavily harvested for the table. The Indian mottled eel, the anguilla, is near threatened. It is found in a lot of rivers, including the south and the north, and they grow quite big. It actually migrates all the way to actually reproduce. And of course, the snappers. Basically, it's known as red snapper, but we also call it the mangrove jack, which is there in Australia and India and in some parts of Asia as well. The Malabaricus, which is there, is in a near threatened status. The mangrove jack, or the red mangrove jack, is in the least concern because it's there everywhere. I will not go into each of these species for you to understand, because most of these species are there and people know about it, but I will take a little more time in terms of understanding the Mahseer and telling you about the Mahseer. So Mahseer is an iconic fish of India. I think everybody knows about the great fight of a Mahseer. It was known as a sport fish. The British were catching it. There are books written about it, and there are tackle made specifically for Mahseer. So we have 8 known species of Mahseer. We have more species of Mahseer which are still not identified. There was one Mahseer which was given a name last year, which was called the Torrema baby. Mahseer are one of the most threatened group of megafish. It's huge, it's large, they grow. They are omnivore, they eat anything. So In a lot of sense, a lot of poaching or illegal, I wouldn't call illegal fishing, but fishing happens using a variety of baits for the Mahseer, and it is quite caught in a lot of places, including the north and the south. But Mahseer are like, they require clean water, and they are excellent indicators of a very healthy river system. So when you know a Mahseer is there in the river, you know the river is very good. It's clean water. It's crystal clear. In the northeast, it's like the north and the northeast is very, very crystal. And you will see them thriving in that, and they love fast-flowing waters. Mahseer require, they need to travel upstream to reproduce. I think Julie has taken us through some of the habitats and the swimways of the golden Mahseer. There is not much study done on the southern Mahseer in terms of the migratory patterns and how they actually migrate upstream. The widely known Mahseer are the golden Mahseer, which you see on the left, which is typically golden in color, which we find mostly in the North India, the Northeast India. What you see in the middle is a fish that was caught recently. Unfortunately, it was killed. It is the humpback Mahseer, or the Tor Rema baby, which was named last year. It's known as the largest of the Mahseer species. I think British have documented that they have seen fish over 100 kilos in terms of the humpback Mahseer. It is right now. It's almost to its extinct status right now because it is not found easily. We have threat of the invasive species in the Kaveri River and its adjoining tributaries. That's where it is described at the moment. On the right, what you see is the bluefin Mahseer, which is actually the most popular fish, which is found all over. Also because of hatcheries which have been producing the bluefin Mahseer and propagating it, so it's actually very popular in the places. There are other Mahseers which we have in terms of the eight Mahseer. We have the Malabaricus, the Wayanadin system there. These are not popular, they're restricted to certain areas in the country and not widely known. So what's happening to our fish? I mean, you've seen in my first slide, we talk about the number of dams. So you can imagine what's happening to our fish with, that many number of dams that are there in this country. We have hydropower dams, we have check dams and balancing reservoirs. We have man-made dams, which actually people use for irrigation purposes. So, and also to catch fish. You can see in the first photograph, that is a dam built by humans to actually catch fish or, get them into a small place and then catch them. So this is one of them, and this typically go up during a monsoon and also the receding monsoon. I mean, when the water is drying up, so they catch it both the times before going to breed and also while coming back. Habitat destruction, I think Julie has covered on that. Sand mining, somebody had asked a question of what they do with the sand. So the sand is primarily used for construction. This is a big thing. And sand mining is very rampant, destroying the habitat prime habitat for the Mahseer. India also has a big problem in terms of indiscriminate killing, that is the electrofishing, using electricity and using generators. Dynamite fishing, that's blast fishing, using dynamite to kill fish. Poisoning, that is chemical fishing. There's both natural and artificial poisons that are being used. Loop lines and mini porcine nets. So the porcine nets which were used in the ocean have now started coming into the rivers, and people put it across the river to catch anything that moves through that. We also have livelihood fishermen who fish. That is a small percentage in terms of what destruction they can create, but they are definitely a part that needs to be educated. Destruction of spawning grounds, as I mentioned to you, basically we are moving more and more towards the river, taking over the forest because of population, and so it is actually destroying the rivers. Introduction of invasive species. So we've got some crazy invasive species in our country. The primary being the tilapia and the African catfish, which have taken over almost every river in the country. And the recent threat that has been going on is the pacu, which is also being rampantly bred across the country. Hatcheries. Hatcheries have been producing a lot of carp for human consumption, and also hatcheries have been producing the bluefin Mahseer to propagate in our rivers. So creating an imbalance basically. We have no fish stocking policy as of now, so which is a big problem in India. So since there is no fish stocking policy, we can actually, fish are stocked in rivers, dams, and lakes, anywhere there is water. What can we do to save our fish? We have to use a holistic approach. We cannot try and do it on a single species or trying to just save a fish. We have to work towards everyone that is surrounding it, the habitat, the riverine system, NGO. So we have to work with everyone to create a holistic approach in trying to save our fish. We have to create awareness. I think this is one of the biggest things which we have. The recent fish that was caught and was consumed, the villagers believed it to be another species which is called the cutla, and they ate it. But if we had done a good job in terms of creating awareness, probably they would have let it go, and knowing that it was an endangered species. Create a task force. I think a task force is necessary in India, which would comprise of, it's like a body comprising of outfitters, molecular biologists, taxonomists, anglers, local NGOs, policymakers, and local community. I think it requires, as I mentioned to you, a holistic approach that can actually, we can save this fish. We need to define a framework. Without a framework, we cannot save this fish. A framework will consist of what needs to be done, how it should be approached, how the policies need to be worked, what are we supposed to do about the illegal fishing, about destruction. So I think this is one very important aspect. A framework needs to be put in place to save our fish. Then last but not the least is to use anglers to collect data. Anglers are very keen, like I'm an angler myself, and you can see in the background there's a lot of fishing rods over there. This is my fishing room. And we are there in front of the river all the time. We're catching fish. Anglers can be used to collect data in terms of water temperature, turbidity, the pH level. We can collect DNA samples for molecular biologists. For taxonomists, we can collect measurements and other aspects of a fish, and give it to them in a format that they need. So I think anglers are great field resources and should be promoted to use to save our fish. Just to talk about Mahseer Trust a little bit, I'm part of Mahseer Trust. Mahseer Trust is a UK registered charity. Mahseer Trust is set up to conserve Mahseer as a flagship species. That is, we operate throughout the Mahseer range countries in South and Southeast Asia. It's not only in India, though it's set up in the UK. We work with all the range countries, and we've been doing some significant work in there. Mahseer Trust works in partnership with conservation organizations in India. We work with different organizations because as we believe it's a holistic approach and needs to be approached in that way. Mahseer Trust, along with AIGSA, has been celebrating World Fish Migration Day in India since 2014. Since 2014, I've been working with Herman, and we've been celebrating the World Fish Migration Day because we feel it's very important, and we need people to be aware of our migratory species there, and not to just treat fish as food, but also treat fish as friends. So it's one very important aspect, and we believe that working through children, we have a better approach where the children understanding of fish is much higher, and they can propagate it much better. So we've been working with children and children camps all throughout, and even recently we've conducted our AIGFA Hyderabad chapter conducted a drawing and painting competition for children for them to understand what a fish ladder is, so they can understand what a migratory species requires. My last slide, but not least, is about AIGFA, which is the All India Game Fishing Association. We are a non-profit charitable organization in India. We constitute of anglers. We have about 16,000 anglers altogether. We believe that an active participation of anglers can conserve our fish. We actively promote catch and release. We do a lot of tournaments, and we ensure that every tournament is a catch and release tournament. We create awareness of our fish species. So we believe that one of the best ways, as fish is not seen, and when it's not seen, nobody cares about fish because they don't know. The only time they see fish is on the plate or in the market when it is being sold, but they don't see it as a live, as another creature. People always say that fish, have no feelings. So it's okay to eat fish because they have no feelings. So there was one famous singer who actually sang it as well. So, but that is not true. Our belief is that people need to understand the different fish species we have, and anglers are doing a great job in terms of showcasing the fish by catching them, taking a picture and releasing them, which creates anxiousness in terms of people, and want to know which fish it is and where it was caught and how big it was. The bigger the fish, the better story there is to say and to rescue it. With this, I end my presentation. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Derek. That was very, very interesting. And you made so many different, absolutely critical points that I don't even know which one to emphasize. The one of the last very important ones to me was working with children, and that's actually very true. Yeah, do work with children. They are the future, and if they are on board on conservation concerns, yeah, half the rent is paid, so to speak. We have time for questions, maybe 3 questions from the audience. Could the question manager please forward 3 questions?
Hi, Ruben. Thanks very much. Yes, Derek, it's an amazing presentation. It was really interesting to follow this. Also a challenge to see how many different challenges you face in conserving the fish. And some of the questions are related to this topic. First of all, it's really interesting to see how you use the game fishing in protecting these species. Apparently, they are showcasing how they are treating these species. So how can you also reach out to the local people and convince local people that they should really think about conserving these species and for instance, not telling them to fish in spawning season? Can you say something on this?
Yes, see, one is to create awareness. See, where we've worked, especially in the Northeast, when I travel, I see that the local villages understand the importance of the fish to its rivers. We have seen the local villages and panchayats, especially in Arunachal and Meghalaya, where they have created conservation zones and restricted areas where they promote, where they do not allow anyone to catch fish. And in India, there is already a ban in terms of not catching fish during the spawning season. Throughout, that is being followed, like during the monsoon season, because that's what is considered as a spawning season. But unless we have to make them understand that by catching one fish and eating it, they are going to restrict themselves of the thousands of other fish that this fish during a spawning season can give them over the period of next 10 years or 5 years, you know. So this is an awareness, and it works. I mean, we've seen the awareness work, and this is happening, you know, by the villagers themselves in the Northeast. So if it can happen there, then I think it can work anywhere else, because Northeast is such a great place which has created conservation specifically for fish.
Thank you very much. Is there one more quick question?
Well, there are many questions actually, Ruben, so I have to pick one out. I do like this question. Derek, how did you get involved in your work in the trust? And what is your favorite memory of working with them, Mahseer?
Yeah, so basically, as I mentioned, I mean, it's there in my bio, I've not mentioned it, but when I went to catch the Mahseer the first time, I didn't know what fish I was going for. I just got a rod and went there to catch a fish. And the first fish broke my fishing rod, and I was trying to figure out what the hell happened. I mean, you know, and the guys laughed at me. They said, it is going to happen. You cannot use this kind of. I bought a float fishing rod and I went to catch a Mahseer. So I went back to the UK, bought the biggest rod and reel which I could afford. That was actually a surf casting rod and reel. I came back and I was fishing again, and the reel broke. You know, again the reel broke. And I was like, what the hell is this? So I did a lot of research, and I think it took me almost about 3 years to catch a decent sized Mahseer fish. When I say decent size, it would, in those days, was probably about a 20-pounder. And I was surprised the amount of power that the fish had. And I started, you know, looking, searching for it and trying to understand it. There was very little data available at that time. I'm talking about 2002. And over a period of years, I managed to learn more about it. When I heard Mahseer Trust had started, I became, I think, one of the first members. They were opening for membership, and I became one of the first members of Mahseer Trust because I wanted to do something for the fish, because I fell in love with it. And I'm still in love with that fish. I don't think there is, this is for all you guys, anglers, and everyone who doesn't fish. I think you have to catch a Mahseer to believe it's what it is. It is something else. It's an amazing sense of power and the beauty of the fish and the way it actually fights. And when you hold it, it's such a beautiful fish. And then you release it back, and that's the best memory you can have working with Mahseer. And I think I love doing that. And that, if given a choice, I would love to do that every day.
That's very inspirational, Derek. Thank you very much. There are many more questions, so if you can, maybe you can.
I will answer them directly.
Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was absolutely inspirational. Maybe we have some time for further questions later, but for now, I would like to move on with the program and announce Bakhtiar Karimov. He's a professor at the Tashkent Institute of Irrigation and Agricultural Mechanization Engineers, and he belongs to the Academy of Science of Uzbekistan. And I think he's already with us right now. We are 122 participants at the moment. Thank you for tuning in. We are looking forward to the next talks. Please, if you have a question, just use the question and answer function. Please do it also during the talk. That makes the job for the question manager a lot easier. And I would like to hand over the floor to Bakhtiar. And thank you for coming. And we're looking forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruben. Hello, everyone, dear ladies and gentlemen. I am from Uzbekistan, from Central Asia. So I am chairman of the IUCN Freshwater Fish Specialist Group for Central Asia. And today's my presentation is devoted to Aral Sea fauna.
A quick interruption, please. You haven't started your screen sharing yet. There should be a button at yes. There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Now okay.
Yeah, and now if you would move to full screen and start the presentation. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay.
We can hear you just fine. We see you perfectly clear. Go ahead. Thank you very much.
Good, very well. In our presentation, we use the term refugium in the sense of water bodies that permits refuge species, once more widespread organisms of former Aral Sea fauna to be maintained that would not survive in the Aral Sea under current eco-hydrological conditions. Here you see the map of Central Asia, Aral Sea Basin. And on this slide, I would like to show you the Aral Sea during the different periods of last century. Picture on the left side, this is before 1960s. And the picture in the middle, this is in 2014. And the right picture is the picture of today. So you see that a huge decline of sea area and drying out of former sea bottom. Here on this slide, I would like to show you some pictures from Aral Sea history, that is capture fisheries fleets on the Aral Sea. You see here, there was a lot of fishery fleets and a lot of fishermen. There were a lot, more than 1,200 fishermen in southern Aral Sea fishery. And the fish capturing was the main sector of the economy of Autonomous Republic of Karakal, Pakistan. And here,
excuse me, you have somehow turned your full screen off. Is there a chance to turn it back on in presentation mode? Now you're starting it from the beginning.
I'm sorry.
That's not a problem. If you just switch to the slide that you've just been at, probably using your keys, the right arrow key maybe, yeah, and another one maybe.
This one, this one, yes.
I think it was, yeah, or one more, yeah, and there we go. Thank you.
Yeah, on this slide you see the former Aral Sea when we had flourishing fish capture on the sea. There were more than 1,200 fishermen and about 120 fish capture fleets. So capture fishery was the main sector of the economy of Karakal, Pakistan Autonomous Republic. And here you see the Aral Sea during the end of 1980s. This is Aral's Muinak city on the southern Aral Sea coast. Earlier it was the main port in southern Aral Sea, but already at the end of 1980s there was no water and there was no fish, and there was just desert, sand desert. And now, here on this slide, you see the aboriginal ichthyofauna or aboriginal fish species of the Aral Sea. We had in the Aral Sea more than 20 indigenous aboriginal fish species and more than 15 introduced fish species. Mainly there were cyprinida species, Aral bream, Aral common carp, Aral roach, Aral shemaya, and so on. There were also persida like pike perch, roof, Acipenzerida, sturgeons, Aral sturgeons like bastard sturgeon, Amudaria shovel nose, small Amudaria shovel nose and big Amudaria shovel nose. We had even Salmonida. We had Aral salmon, Salmo aralensis, and other very endemic fish species like Aral stickleback. So, but already at the beginning of 90s or at the end of 1980s, all aboriginal commercial species left and many introduced species disappeared, the Aral Sea. And end of 1990s, there was no fish. I mean, in the Aral Sea itself, there was no fish because of very, very high salinity of water. So now about the fish fauna biodiversity in Uzbekistan. Today we have about 74 fish species. From them, about 42 species are aboriginal, indigenous fish species. Red-listed fish species of Uzbekistan includes about 18 species, including bastard sturgeon, Acipenza nudiventris, and shovel noses, Aral Sea basin shovel noses, big shovel nose, Amudare shovel nose, small Amudare shovel nose, and Cedar shovel nose. And other fish species include Aral barbel. Now I am reading only some of them, not all 18 species. Very interesting fish species from them are Salmon aralensis. That was very rare fish species. Okay, let's move ahead. Here, again, you see aboriginal refugee fish species of the Aral Sea. From them, green colored are extremely rare species. Again, you see about 23 fish species. They were refugee fish species after the desiccation of Aral Sea ecosystem. So, migratory species of Aral Sea region. Yeah, on this picture you see Amudare River in the downstream, and here we had the Amudare and Cedar rivers confluencing, or they were main tributaries, or only tributaries of the Aral Sea. And they were also very important spawning habitats of two migrating fish species, the Aral Sea sturgeon, Acipenza nudiventris, or bastard sturgeon, Aral barbel, Barbus brachycephalus, who were feeding in the sea, migrated for spawning into rivers to a distance of more than 1,400 kilometers up to Amudare upstream area. There were also semi-migratory species like Aral asp, Turkestan barbel, white-eye bream, and Aral bream. And the young fish then returned to the sea to feed and measure before they started migrating upstream again. So we had also species extinct before the Aral Sea desiccation. Nobody can say whether due to anthropogenic impact or whether due to other natural factors, but Aral salmon, which was already very, very rare species. The last fish was caught in 1937. That means before the Aral Sea desiccation. Now it's extinct. This species is extinct. although it's still included into the IUCN Red List category, critically endangered, but we think it's already extinct. Okay, now about refugee species extinct or possibly extinct under anthropogenic oral sea desiccation. They are Acipenza budiventris, bastard sturgeon, and Pseudoscaphiringus fetchenkoi, or Sirdaria shovelnose. And here you see refugee species critically endangered under anthropogenic oral sea desiccation. This is a large or big oral sea, big Amudaria shovelnose and small Amudaria shovelnose. And on this slide, you see the endangered fish species. Here you see the Aral barbel and Aral stickleback and Abramis brahma. So these exist. Today they are not existing in the Aral Sea because we don't have Aral Sea, but they exist in delta water bodies, in some rivers, and even in Amudarya River itself. And about the causes of refugees and refugee. So in fact, the main cause is hydrotechnical construction and irrigational water abstraction. On migratory, these were the main impact on migratory fish species. For example, dams have stopped fish migrations and reservoirs have flooded natural spawning and feeding grounds. And the first dam was built in 1970s, 200 kilometers upstream to the Aral Sea, Tahiatash Dam. It was the main obstacle, for example, for Aral sturgeons migration. Now, today we have numerous refugia in southern Aral Sea region. We have a lot, more than 100 large and medium-sized lakes and reservoirs in Amudarya and Sirdarya River Delta areas. In southern Aral Sea region, more than 10 large lakes with total area of 500,000 hectares. And northern Aral Sea region, there are also refugia. For example, the small Aral is the largest remnant water body of the northern Aral with total area of 320,000 hectares, in which today we have rehabilitated more than 70 refugee fishes. That's briefly all what I would like to tell you today. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have, of course, if you have some questions, maybe if you have questions, please, you can ask via email. Here you see my email address. Thank you very much again.
Well, thank you very much. It's been very interesting. It's always sad to me to see how the Aral Sea has developed just by mismanaging it, right? I'm glad to hear that some refugias seem to work though. We have time for questions, a lot of time in fact. So please just could the question manager appear on screen and forward some of the questions?
Yes, Ruben, thank you very much. And thank you very much for your presentation. I agree with Ruben. It's an amazing, but also a very sad story. It's already been said by some of the attendees that the Aral Sea is often being used as an example of the extreme impact of anthropogenic activity on ecosystems. You were saying that hydropower and irrigation water restriction is one of the main issues taking place here, and we were wondering is this problem still increasing, or is there already a turn on events? Is it already clear that this should be decreased?
Sorry, Mark, it was not clear to hear you. Can you speak a little bit louder, please?
Yes. The question I wanted to ask is that you said that hydropower and irrigation water extraction is one of the major issues taking place here. And I was wondering whether this problem is still increasing or whether it's already clear that this should be decreased, actually. Can you say something on this?
Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, our agricultural practices are still the same. Of course, we are trying today to save water by implementing intensive agriculture technologies, for example, drip irrigation, for example, rain irrigation, or we are trying just to change our agricultural crops. For example, we are trying to have little cotton fields today and to produce more vegetables and fruits for the local population and also for the export. But still, everybody knows that water is very, very huge deficit in Central Asia. It depends also from the climate change. Yes, some years we have high water years, some years we have droughts, and the extreme droughts were in 2001, 2002, for example, and in 2010, for example. In 2001 and 2002, all water bodies in Amur Delta area were completely dried out. There was no fish left on these water bodies, of course. So I would say hydrotechnical construction and water extraction for the agriculture is still the problem number one for fish migrations in Central Asia, in whole Central Asia, because we are arid land, and arid agriculture, you know, without water extraction, impossible.
Thank you very much for this answer. Ruben, is there time for another question?
We have time for one quick question. Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, I get an interesting question about the memories of people themselves. Of course, you said the whole development of the RLC took place in such a short time. So people might still remember how the situation would be before this all took place. Could you somehow use this history, these memories of how the ecosystem was in previous stages to advocate, to better treat these ecosystems? So could you use local people, actually, their memories to show the importance of how to treat ecosystems?
Okay, thank you. So of course, local people, for example, in Amur Delta, they were, since thousands of years, they were fishermen. The fish capturing was the main sector of the economy since thousands of years. So they understand very well the importance of fish protection measures. But if they don't have water coming into the downstream area, they cannot do anything. I mean, the destiny of fish populations in deltaic area depends from the upstream and from the midstream agricultural development. For example, on Amur River, there are a lot of water extraction, very, very large canals, irrigation canals. For example, Karakum Canal in Turkmenistan, it diverts or extracts more than 12 cubic kilometers of water into the desert. And Uzbekistan, from Uzbekistan's side, we have also a lot of large, very, very large canals. And fish protection measures, that means also migration. Fishes have no priority in water use schemes. Yeah, the first, water should be used for the irrigation. And second, it should be used for the hydropower production. And only in the last, as a last, we can think about fish protections, about the capture fishery, about even aquaculture is under big dependence from the irrigational water use. So local people in this area, they understand, but they cannot do anything.
I understand. Thank you very much for answering these questions.
You're welcome.
Well, okay, then I think it's time for me to take over and give you guys a wrap up of the session. Thank you so much for joining. Please, if the speakers are still there, could you just turn on your webcam for a second? And
I'm sorry to interrupt.
I think that Herman is now ready to do a short talk as well. And I would imagine we still have time for that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well then, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it then. Hi, Herman. Thanks for joining in. I'm sorry, we do the wrap up after your talk. Have you here. Please, the floor is yours.
Just be sure, Ruben, how much time do I have? Because then I know how long I can.
Could you do it in 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, let's share the screen. Can you see the screen, Ruben?
Yes, we hear you all right. Yeah, it's in full screen. We can hear you.
Okay. Hey, thank you, everybody. And I want to compliment you, all the team, for making this possible, and also for everybody who's listening. This is really special. Because I think one of the speakers was not here today, I have the opportunity to say something about how this all got started, how this movement got started. So I'm Herman. I'm the founder of the World Fish Migration Foundation. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we got this movement started. And it's about people, and from children to adults. It's about connecting these people to rivers, and these people, they all love free-flowing rivers. I think that's something we all share, that we really like to see rivers flowing. And it, for me, at least, it gives a feeling of rest, a feeling of being part of nature. That's free-flowing rivers to me. And I started my career in Groningen and in the north of the Netherlands, and this is the regional water authority, Hunze en Aas. And I've got a cat also in the house, but this is the Hunze en Aas Water Authority, and that's where I started in 2000. And this was the first fishway I was involved in. And one moment, I'm going to put the cat outside. One moment. Okay. And I discovered that all these fish in our water authority are migrating from the sea to the source, and that made me think, hey, how does it work? How can I help these fish? And we developed a vision called From Sea to Source vision, and a plan connected to that. And with that vision and that plan, we started to remove obstacles, building fishways. And this is the map we created. This is the fish highway map we created with dots on the map, with weirs, pumping stations, and so on. And this is the map of 10 years later. So we really started to remove all these obstacles and opening up rivers for fish. And I also discovered that these fish also moved all over the world and through international borders and all over the world. And these fish, they love to spawn. So we created a guidance for practitioners, because we thought that we wanted to connect all this knowledge from all over the world and also from Europe in a guidance. So we started this this international cooperation. And what binds us is that we all these free-flowing rivers all around the world, they are actually a migratory highway for fish. And not only for fish, but also for birds, and it's all connected with each other. And I saw, when I went to Sweden, for example, I saw these salmons getting stuck at the treasure, at the hydropower dams, and it really got me thinking there should be something should be done. I saw these fish banging their head all over the world, and this is happening everywhere, and it really got me thinking this needs to be tackled on an international level. I saw this dam in the USA being removed, a 60-meter high dam, and that really inspired me to think, hey, can this happen in other parts of the world too? And this picture is an inspiring picture for me. It really shows that these rivers are the veins of the earth, and it's all connected with each other. So that's why I think it was around 2011 where I started to think that this should be solved on an international level, and that I really thought that people should be connected, and we need to share knowledge and do this all together. And that's why we started the World Fish Migration Foundation in 2011 with our mission to save migratory fish and rivers. And our dream, our vision is to have rivers full of fish all around the world. And we want to connect fish, rivers, and people. And we are doing that by creating awareness, commitment for free-flowing rivers, and to open up swimways, and to activate citizens and practitioners around the world. And we want to create impact. We want to create a global movement of change makers, of people who want to really help and by research or by being a policy maker, all kinds of people that want to really make this happen. So we are creating guidance tools like this book. We have a book called the From Sea to Source book. You can download it on www.fromseatosource.com, and gives an overview of how the problems can be solved. For example, by installing fishways, but also by removing dams. And it gives it highlights how people are doing research, and it highlights solutions. So if you want to learn more about that, download that guidance. And we want to celebrate all these success stories all over the world together, and we want to celebrate the challenges together. And we want to open up rivers around the world and make people proud. That's what we want to do together with this global movement. And the more people we can make aware, this is Jeremy Wade, the more chance we have to find solutions. And this Jeremy Wade from the Rivers Monsters program is one of our ambassadors. So we are really proud that we have him on board. So this movement, which started really small in the north of the Netherlands, is now turning into a global movement. And I'm really proud that this is happening. And one of these activities we now have is World Fish Migration Day, which we started in 2014. And now we are reaching out to millions, multi-millions of people, together with our partners listed on the left. Many events all over the world. Derek already said something about this, and Derek was there from the start. And it's amazing to see every time we organize a World Fish Migration Day that it's still growing and growing. So there's an urgent need. I think it's also says something about it, that there's an urgent need that this topic gets solved. And it really inspires me to see that something small that started in 2000 when I started at the Hunzenaars Water Authority, where I organized a fish migration day for the first time, that this is now the biggest global event to raise awareness for fish and rivers. So really special to see that this movement is really becoming bigger and bigger. And now we have a movement to start removing dams as well in Europe. And this is something we want to do on a global level as well, because it is possible to remove old and obsolete dams. And we want to make dam removal a viable solution to open up rivers and to renovate European rivers. But at the end, our vision is to do this on a global level. For Europe, for example, there are 100,000 old and obsolete dams which can be removed. Nobody knew this until we started to talk about it and to talk to our movement and our colleagues about this. And now we are finding out that there are so many dams that can be easily removed. We have a website, damremoval.eu. You can find all kinds of case studies which are happening in Europe. And we want to scale this up on a big level and also on a global level. Two examples, these big dams in Estonia and France are now gone. This is the one in France, gone, 35 meters high. This is the one in Estonia, gone. The river is free flowing again. And this is these are amazing showcases, which we want to share with the global community. So my dream, last slide, my dream is to protect, restore, and celebrate global swimways. And together with the global movement, the global community, and that's you. And I hope that you will join us and for the next years to come and make this a big topic and really help migratory fish and that we don't see so many pictures anymore of fish who are going extinct. I think we have an opportunity now to turn the tide, and I hope that will happen. And thank you very much for your attention. It started a little bit strange with the sketch, which I had to remove first, but but let's talk about fish. Okay, hey, thank you very much.
Wow, yeah, thank you, Herman. That was a very, very interesting story. It's a fantastic story on how a local idea just becomes a global and very successful and critical movement. It's truly amazing. Okay, so let's do the wrap up. Again, I would like to I would like every presenter to turn their camera back on so we can do a last goodbye together. While you are doing that, I will also start to highlight a few things that we've learned in this session, starting with Julie. I'm very, very happy that Julie was here, and it's also very interesting to see that the problems that fish and migratory fish face is like always comes down to the one thing, and that's like damming. And even if there's fish upstream and downstream migration facilities, they rarely work. And yeah, so we hope that we can all learn our lesson from that. And it's also very, very interesting that the fish seem really to get other different environmental cues than just the water level, which makes them even more susceptible. This is very critical. I was very impressed by Olga's talk as well, and I didn't know that the catchment was that big and that it's home to the Amur tiger and the Amur leopard. That's crazy. Yeah, really, really cool. Well, Derek, I already mentioned that I found Derek's talk particularly interesting because he made so many points that I could just sign constantly, put my name under it, and yeah. Yeah, he emphasized the significance of recreational anglers, and that's something that we need to hear more often, because recreational anglers can really contribute a lot to wildlife management and wildlife conservation in the way that Derek and his team is doing that. So thank you very much. Recreational angling might really be a fantastic, or is a fantastic way to preserve wildlife. Also, Derek mentioned the problems with dams again. It's always the same, and the conservation infrastructure, so to speak, in India that needs further development and holistic approaches. Back to your talked about the Aral Sea and how mismanaging the water resources have led to this dire situation, and this one sad correlation between salinity and catch per unit effort was something that was particularly sad for me to see. But I'm happy to see that there seem to be some efforts in conserving what's still left. And with that, I would like to hand over back to Arjan, who's gonna do the final words. And thank you very much, everybody, for joining in. It's been fantastic. It's been an honor to chair your session. I hope to see you all soon.
Yeah, well, I have to thank you, of course, as well, Ruben, and specifically also all the speakers. Really, thank you for this fantastic session again. It's been a third session again, and it was really, really interesting to learn a lot of new stuff. Let me just take the opportunity, because this is important for us to be able to do this. We have had support from a lot of people and organizations. You can see it here on the screen. We want to thank you for their support, and also for the support they are giving to us for World Fish Migration Day. That's really appreciated, and it makes it possible to make this each time bigger and bigger, as Herman was saying. So just thank you a lot. Also, if I can say, on behalf of the migratory fish, and I would like to end this session with a song. We are organizing a Eurovision. You might know in Europe we have a Eurovision contest, which was supposed to take place on the 16th of May. And that is not going on because of the COVID situation. And we thought, well, when we will organize a Eurovision. And we have organized that, and we started people asking people to sing songs and send it to us. And you can also vote for these songs in 2 days. And I thought it would be nice to listen to one of them. I selected the one of Amur Ecoregion. Some of you might know him. He's been quite a lot also in Thailand and other places. And he has made a really, really nice song, which I will play for you. One moment. And then I say goodbye to you all. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to the next session. 50 minutes.
As a fry, I didn't know where Mum and Daddy used to go. They'd leave me in the riverbed to go and party in the red. Adult size, I kinda got a little wise, but thought and urge was slowly dawning. I fancied the idea of spawning. So up I ran against the stream, hoping to fulfill my dream. But something stopped my cunning plan. I hit the wall and shouted, damn! Swimming free, that's how fishes want to be. Flowing free, that's how rivers need to be. For the good of you and me. biped stopped one night with some sticks of dynamite. The concrete splintered with a bang, and up the flow I gladly swam. I swam up in a headlong rush. What happened next might make you blush, but it felt like destiny. I'm so pleased to be swimming free, swimming free, swimming free. That's how fishes want to be, flowing free, flowing free. That's how rivers need to be, for the good of you and me. Yeah, swimming free, swimming free. That's how fishes want to be, flowing free, flowing free. That's how rivers need to be, for the good of you and me.
Now, wasn't that nice? Fantastic. I will stop sharing now. And let's wait. Thanks, let's wait for the next one to start. See you later.